Hi world, I'm here today to show you the two-color double shaker knitting pattern. It is a version of the brioche pattern by Gisela Klopper. It's very simple. There's a lot of different ways to do the brioche pattern, but I'm going to tell you the way that made sense to me and helped me learn it because it's really not complicated once you start learning it. So we're going to go ahead and do a long tail cast on. So I've made a slip knot. And here we go. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So now I'm ready to start, and with my edge stitch I'm going to go ahead and purl that stitch, and now that I've purled it, I'm ready to begin the actual pattern. So here we go. I'm going to purl this first stitch, and slip one stitch purlwise with yarn over, which means slip this stitch purlwise while doing your yarn over prior. So I do my yarn over and slip this stitch. And now I can purl this next stitch. And slip this next stitch purlwise with my yarn over and back. Purl this next stitch. Slip this stitch purlwise with my yarn over and back. Purl this next stitch. Slip this stitch purlwise with my yarn over and back. Purl this next stitch and purl my edge stitch. And that completes the first row. Now normally what you would do is you would turn your work in normal knitting, but because this is brioche knitting, you can't do that. So what that means is and the reason why we're using DPNs is because you want to slide this down to introduce your second color. And it'll make sense later, I promise, so just kind of stick with it. So what you want to do is you want to take this next piece of yarn. I'm choosing silver just because it's a nice contrasting color. And I'm just gonna slip this over. Well, stick my needle through, like so. And again, there's a lot of different ways to introduce colors, but I'm just doing it a really simple way because this is just for demonstration purposes. And slip that through. And now I'm ready to begin working my next row. So what I need to do for this row is slip one stitch purlwise with one yarn over. So I'm going to slip this stitch purlwise like the previous row, with my yarn over and back. And now it's asking me to knit the next stitch together with the yarn over. So what that means is I'm just going to knit these next 2 stitches together and then repeat. So again, I'm going to bring my yarn in front so that I can purl this next stitch, or slip it purlwise rather. And that means my yarn over maintains its structure and integrity in the back, and then I knit these 2 stitches together. So again, bringing the yarn to front, I'm going to slip this and then knit these 2 stitches together. And then next, I'm going to just slip these 2 and then knit these 2 stitches together. And then it's asking me to end by slipping 1 stitch purlwise with 1 yarn over. So what that means is I'm going to slip this purlwise and I'm using my index finger to make sure that stays behind the stitch I just slipped. And then because this is a right side row or an even number row, I'm just gonna knit my next stitch. And that's the first part. So it doesn't look like much right now. Obviously, it doesn't look like this, but it will. So if you stuck with it so far, what you're gonna do now is you're just gonna turn your work, and now you can see on the end here that you have 2 contrasting colors to do rows 3 and 4 with. So now that you have to do rows 3 and 4 and you flipped your work, what you're gonna do is you're gonna start with color A, or your initial contrast color, and you're just going to purl this edge stitch. So you've purled this edge stitch, and what it's asking you to do now is knit 1 stitch together with 1 yarn over. And all that means is that the yarn over that you made before, which was this gray one, you're just gonna knit these 2 stitches together. That's all that's asking you to do. And now it's asking you to slip 1 stitch purlwise with 1 yarn over. So what that is asking you to do again is to simply just create a yarn over while slipping your stitch purlwise. And you do that by placing the yarn in front, and again I use my index finger to just hold and slip it. So now you just knit these next 2 stitches together, and then you're gonna purl. And now knit these next 2 stitches together, and create that purl. Knit the next 2 together, create that purl, and then this says, can you please end by knitting 1 stitch together with yarn over. So you can see right here, I've just knit the next 2 stitches together with the yarn over, and now that we have reached the end of row 3, we're just gonna purl that last edge stitch. And now what you want to do is, like you did to get to from row 1 to 2, and I know it's really blurry, but like you got from row 1 to 2, all you have to do now is just slide this over to continue with your contrasting color, which is the gray. So this is the way it makes sense in my brain, and I hope it's making sense to you so far. I know it still looks a little bit funny, but you'll see as we transition that it gets much, much easier. So with row 4, what you're gonna do is, because it is an even number, you are going to knit your edge stitch like so. And now what you want to do is you want to slip 1 stitch purlwise with 1 yarn over. So all that means is you bring your yarn in front, because a yarn over is traditionally like that, but because you're purling it, all you have to do is, again, is what I do, or whatever way works for you, is hold your finger like so and just slip it. And now it says purl 1 stitch together with 1 yarn over. So what that is asking you to do is to bring your yarn in front, go into the front of these 2 stitches and purl them both together. And then we are back to purling, slipping 1 stitch purlwise with 1 yarn over. So slipping this stitch and then purling the next 2 together. Again, placing that in front and then purling the next 2 together. Placing this in front and purling the next 2 together. And we know that's correct because the pattern is asking us to end with slipping 1 stitch purlwise with 1 yarn over. So here we are on our last 2 stitches. And so we're slipping that, and then because it's an even number row, we're going to knit this last stitch and just kind of tighten that up. Now, you finished that, so we're going to continue on. We're just going to, we're going to kind of straighten that out. So now that you've finished that, all you have to do is simply flip your work to row 5. And we're all set up to work row 5. So what you want to do is, again, this is an odd number row, so you just want to purl that first stitch. And now it's asking you to purl 1 stitch with 1 yarn over. Oh, purl 1 stitch together with 1 yarn over. So what you're going to do is you're going to purl these 2 together. And now it's asking you to slip 1 stitch purlwise with 1 yarn over. So what that is asking you to do is to slip this next stitch purlwise while holding that yarn over and back. And now you're going to purl 1 stitch together with 1 yarn over. So that means you just purl these next 2 together and then continue. So I'm slipping and I'm purling the next 2 together, and I'm slipping and I'm purling the next 2 together, and I'm slipping and I'm purling the next 2 together. And because I've reached my last stitch, I'm purling it. So now you can see we've done the first 5 rows, and it's actually starting to look like something. You can see the gray on this side and the pink starting to show on this side. So now it's asking me to repeat, excuse me. So now it's asking me to repeat rows 2 through 5. So in order to repeat rows 2 through 5, and because I just did my pink, instead of doing what I would normally do, which is what I did in the beginning, which is flip it, I can't. So what I have to do, because I need to start with my contrasting color, is just slide it down. So we slid it down, and now we're gonna go back to row 2. So now we're back on row 2, and because it is an even row, you're going to just simply knit this stitch and slip 1 stitch purlwise with 1 yarn over, which simply means again, bring your yarn in front and then slip this purlwise. And now you want to knit the next stitch together with the yarn over. So that just means knit these next 2 stitches together. Slipping and knitting the next 2 together. Slipping and knitting the next 2 together, slipping, and ending with slipping. And because it's an even row, I'm just gonna knit this last stitch. And now I'm back to a wrong side row, row 3. So now I can flip this. Which puts me in a position to start with row 3. And again, sometimes your yarns can get crossed. I don't like it when my yarn gets crossed, so typically I just take the time to shift it. Setting up for row 3. I know I need to purl this edge stitch and continue on with the pattern. So knit 1 stitch together with the yarn over, so that literally means knit these 2 together, and then slip 1 stitch purlwise with 1 yarn over, and knit 1 stitch together with the yarn over, which again, another way of thinking of that is knitting those next 2 together, purling and knitting, and purling and knitting and purling and knitting. And it says to knit 1, ending with knit 1 stitch together with yarn over, which we did. It's a wrong side row, so we know we need to purl this last stitch. And now I'm going to slide this down so that I can continue working with row 4. So, row 4 is an even number row, so that I know I need to knit this edge stitch. And now I'm going to slip 1 stitch purlwise with 1 yarn over. So that means do that. And then purl 1 stitch together with 1 yarn over. When you see together with, again, that just means purl these 2 together. So slipping and then purling these 2 together, slipping, purling these 2 together, slipping, purling these two together. And ending with slipping one stitch purlwise with one yarn over. It's an even numbered row, so I knit my edge stitch. And now we're back to row 5, which means we flip it. So that's all you do to do the brioche stitch, is you just knit it back and forth, back and forth. You do rows 1 through 5 and then 2 through 5. So when you get to row 5, you're going to start with your pink, and then when you finish row 5, you'll just slide this down so that you can continue with silver. So when you get to silver, you'll be able to flip it and do rows 3 and 4 by, again, starting with pink, ending with silver, slide it, flip it, 5, slide 2, flip, 3, slide 4, flip. And that's how you do the brioche stitch. If you watched this far, thank you for watching. And I hope that my way made sense to you.